So this is again, As It Is Volume 2 by Tulku Orgyen Rinpoche, translated by Erik Pema Kunsang. So this is in the section, The Heart of the Matter, the Heart of the Teaching. And it looks like Rinpoche is going to talk about how to meditate. So he says, the actual meaning of meditation state in Buddhism, when using the term nyamshak, is equality, composure, equanimity. In the moment of recognizing rigpa, there is no need to accept or reject, avoid or adopt, hope or fear. There is an evenness, regardless of the situation. All right, last time we were talking about how awareness doesn't change. And there was a question of, how do I know it doesn't change? Well, basically, when resting in it, you see directly that it doesn't change. Because it doesn't change, the things that are within awareness, the phenomena, also don't really change. And because of that, you see them perfectly even. This is why you can have one teaching. There's no need for 1,000 different teachings, because the same teaching is applicable to everything. So Rinpoche says, the very basis for such equanimity is this present wakefulness, without which we would be corpses, only physical bodies, material forms. Yet now, we are alive because of this present wakefulness. Once you recognize this present wakefulness that does not accept or reject, affirm or deny, hope or fear, that in itself is sufficient. It is not your mind from yesterday or from last night, tomorrow or next month. It is this very moment, right now. Where is it? Can you find it? Can you find this instant? Recognize this instantaneous wakefulness. Let your mind recognize itself, and immediately you know that there is no thing to be seen. This is just as Rangjung Dorje, the third Karmapa, sang. When observing objects, they are seen to be the mind, devoid of objects. When observing the mind, there is no mind, as it is empty of an entity. When observing both, dualistic fixation is spontaneously freed. May we realize the luminous nature of mind. And by sheer chance, just before this, I was reading a commentary about a text by the third Karmapa, and it explained that this order of objects are seen to be the mind is very important as a preliminary view in the Kagyu lineage. Because they viewed that if you see objects as empty, and they suggested that would be the Madhyamaka view, then it has a tendency of not allowing a further step. It would be more of a Mahayana view of objects don't have substantial existence. It's not false to say that. But if you say instead that objects are mind, now then you've resolved them all to one point. It's still a provisional view because it's a view. But then having resolved them, if you see that the mind itself is empty, then you are freed from the analysis of objects. You no longer need to individually identify phenomena or apply a formula when something arises. You've already embraced them all in something conceptual, yes, but then you free that last concept. So thus, when observing both, dualistic fixation is spontaneously freed. So it's a neat way of organizing the teachings. And that's why they said it's done that way. So Rinpoche continues, when examining outer objects, you understand that there are no real objects. There is only the perceiving mind. Recognizing the nature of this mind, you find no entity. When looking into both subject and object, the fixation on duality dissolves. The existence of a concrete object and the separate concrete subject simply falls away. The duality of perceiver and perceived collapses. Right? But not perception. Even in vision, you do not need to create objects. You do not need to create subjects. You can let the visual consciousness be the visual consciousness. There is simply an additional layer added onto it that doesn't need to be there. It's not inherent. So Rinpoche then quotes, "May we realize the luminous nature of mind," and explains, here, luminous refers to the fact that rigpa is empty and yet cognizant. Physical space cannot be lucid. It has no capacity to know either itself or something else. This is why rigpa is called unconfined empty cognizance suffused with knowing. Or like we say in the group, like space but cognizant. Mingle your mind with space. The mind is already there to be mingled. Notice the space-like aspect of it. So it wouldn't be space by itself exactly. It's just a very good analogy for mind. Because just as objects are in space, space equally pervades every object. No object has more space or less space. So too, all the phenomena are equally pervaded by mind. They don't really exist as individual phenomena, and they don't really exist as a multiplicity. And the nice thing about space is everybody already has a relationship with it. So because of the familiarity, it's a very nice pointing device. You're already not creating a lot of concepts about space. So Rinpoche says, it is the unerring, original, natural state. If you do not contrive it in any way, but simply let be what it is, then right now, the awakened state is spontaneously present. Your immediate, natural, present wakefulness is itself the true Samantabhadra. So in short, giving up doer and deed, rest in non-doing. So what is non-doing? It doesn't mean not doing, because that would be not doing. Non-doing is what's already natural. So in the midst of whatever appears to be arising and vanishing, there is something that doesn't change. That something that doesn't change isn't doing anything, but it's everywhere. So resting in non-doing means resting in that and then not stirring karma, not adding additional effort to what is already naturally without effort, but also not looking for effort to take away, because that itself would be more effort. Thus resting. In fact, if you can just notice what is tense, where there is fixation, and then let that naturally liberate itself, just fade out as it will do. That's very good. In this way, it's kind of like forgetting. That's a nice analogy. If someone told you to forget something, how could you produce forgetting? By bringing it up, you remember it more. Everything you do, you remember it more. And if you just let it be, because the memory was seated and arose, well, then it'll vanish. So Rinpoche says, when you train in giving up doer and deed, you will approach non-action. Doer and deed refers to the subject-object structure. When you recognize mind essence, do you find any place from which your thinking arises? Any place where it dwells? Any location into which it vanishes? Right then and there, you have reached non-action. Consider this. Have you ever been able to find a place where space came out of? A place where space began? A place where it abides and into which it will disappear? This is described as devoid of mental constructs, beyond arising, dwelling, and ceasing. It is also called non-action. When something does not arise, dwell, and cease, it is 100% certain that it is empty. Yeah, so in this way, non-doing is essentially synonymous with awareness. It's, you could say, like a property of awareness. It's not exactly a positive thing, but it can't be produced conceptually. Non-doing does not arise. If there's a difference that you perceive between doing and non-doing, it can't really be true non-doing, because the non-doing would always be there. You would notice instead that you've never been doing anything, just very naturally by resting. All that just to say, don't try to produce non-doing. Rest, relax. That's the instruction. Don't worry about doing or non-doing. It's already non-doing. So Rinpoche says, so, mind is empty, but if it were only empty, it would be impossible to have pleasure and pain, or the experiences of Buddha fields and hells. Since they are definitely possible, it proves that mind is both empty and cognizant. Because of this, there is samsara and nirvana, pleasure and pain, joy and sorrow, the results of virtuous actions, the higher realms in Buddha fields, and the results of negative deeds, which are the three lower realms and the suffering that comes with these. There is samsara below, nirvana above, and in between, the path that is karmic actions of good and evil. All this cannot be denied. It is all like a dream. We have not yet woken up from the deep sleep of ignorance. Usually, we dream while we sleep. The moment we wake up, we do not dream anymore. Buddhas and bodhisattvas are like somebody who has already awakened from sleep. There are all these different dreams, pleasant, unpleasant, fascinating, horrifying. But at the moment we wake up, where are they? Where do they go? Since they are just habitual tendencies, how can they come from anywhere or go anywhere? Similarly, all the different experiences that arise during the day take place within the framework of dualistic mind. The moment dualistic mind is suspended in rigpa, the moment thinking dissolves, the outcome is the wakefulness of knowing, rigpa yeshe. which is essence without thought. Rinpoche says, I have told you the story of mind. Now you need to train in the unfabricated present wakefulness that is only possible through recognition. Knowing how to recognize mind essence is similar to turning on the light. It doesn't come on unless you press the switch. When you have pressed the switch, when the light is on, you naturally meet empty cognizance suffused with knowing. This is exactly what sentient beings never do. They don't know how to recognize. They don't switch on their light. If they did, this one taste of empty cognizance suffused with knowing would automatically be present, because our own nature is dharmata, our essence is rigpa. But even if sentient beings do happen to glimpse the natural state, they do not know what it is. They fail to acknowledge it, and it turns into the indifferent state of the all ground. Yeah, I actually had that experience myself. I had a glimpse way before this of what I now recognize as awareness. I didn't know what to do with it. It was just a very interesting experience that I didn't know how to share with anyone. I never forgot it, but it didn't naturally progress without the teachings, without practice, without Sangha. So when you are face to face with your nature, if you do not begin any striving in terms of shamatha and vipassana or ordinary confusion, you have already seen the essence of mind. Let's repeat that because it's pretty good. If you don't begin any striving, then you have already seen the essence of mind when you are face to face with your nature. Again, don't do anything. Whatever is there, always let it be. The most pernicious and sneaky is analysis, which is like a subtle thought. There are different kinds of thoughts. There are the coarse linguistic thoughts. There can be visual thoughts too. And then there are lower thoughts, more basic, that are more like inclinations, beliefs, analyses. You will feel a tendency to analyze before the thought analysis occurs. You can catch it there just by resting very loosely, not trying to catch anything. You can notice when there's a tendency to analyze. And when you notice it, it kind of scurries away immediately. It's not fully formed into a thought yet, so it can't really be grasped onto, at least in my experience. So you can notice the start of striving just by resting wakefully. And so in that way, it kind of self-tunes itself. If the instruction is only rest, notice what is here, let it be, and you do that, the whole thing self-corrects in the proper direction. It naturally tends toward the liberation of karma. So beyond that, there's no real need for any particular teaching. Certainly not to knock down any antidotes or knock down any problems that might arise. Just growing confidence in the one remedy, resting in the face of what is already here. Simple to say, but very tricky to do. You really have to meditate. It's not so good to just listen to it, listen about it. If it helps to get some inspo, then great. But nothing is better than sitting with your own mind for even 2 minutes. It's very hard to delude yourself if you actually do this. Thus, it's very important to check, to do it. Yeah, so Rinpoche says, it looks like no thing whatsoever. Because it is no thing whatsoever, there is no thing that you can label or describe, no thing about which you can form concepts. It is beyond thought, word, or description. Now, of course, you can describe it, but what you'll feel is that you're just doing an incomplete job. Which is true of everything, actually. If you try to describe a tree to someone and you point to it and say tree, you're both looking at the tree. Well, that can work. Then you know that they see what you see, roughly. But if you're describing a tree and you just say the word tree, well, then they have their own idea of that. You haven't really described the tree. You've communicated a concept. So when you're doing this about awareness, you're just very aware that you're communicating concepts, unless someone is directly perceiving it, looking at it, like the tree. Then you can be sure. Then it's okay to use whatever concepts you want, because you're not really communicating information in the concepts other than what is already there for them. Yeah. So it's beyond thought, word, or description. This is prajnaparamita, transcendent knowledge, since it transcends any subject, and any object. Oh, I did the same thing as Dawai. Oh, that's very funny. Since it transcends any subject and any object to be known. I like subject. They're not really separate, you know. You can only have a subject. That's hard to say. You can only have a subject if there's an object. You can only have an object if there's a subject. You know, in Zen they have subjects are subjects because of objects. Objects are objects because of subjects. Try having a subject that has no object. It will fall away. Try having an object where there's no subject. Can't produce it. Doesn't exist. So Rinpoche says, let me repeat the quote again, the famous quote. Transcendent knowledge is beyond thought, word, and description. It neither arises nor ceases, like the identity of space. It is the domain of individual self-knowing wakefulness. Scroll, Yeshe. Oh, thank you. To this mother of the Buddhas of the three times, I pay homage. Since it is within the individual domain of cognizant wakefulness, anyone can know it. Domain here means that it is possible to recognize. What is recognized is not something that can be thought of, described, or illustrated through example. Yeah, all illustrations, thinking, descriptions, they are pointers. They are not the thing itself. So this knowing is the mother of the Buddhas of the three times, named Prajnaparamita, the great mother. The experience quality of this is called the male Buddha, and the empty quality is the female Buddha. Yeah, female Buddha is the Dharmakaya, like space. And then the male Buddha is the Sambhogakaya, the cognizance. Their unity is Nirmanakaya. So Rinpoche says their unity is the primordial Buddha Samantabhadra with consort, also known as changeless light. There is a deep significance to his name. changeless light. The nature of Tobgyal is unchanging light. In colloquial terms, it is said that Rigpa lives in a house of light, and that this mansion of light is the deities, the manifest aspect. The Dharmakaya Samantabhadra lives in the house of the five Buddha families, which is a mansion of light. Well, this might be a good place to stop. It looks like we have student questions after this. Well, thanks, Yeshe, and everyone. He was saying the subjectification of meditation online is upon us. It's very alluring as a word, subject. Just rolls off the tongue nicely. Yeah, Tulku Rinpoche is great. In particular because he gives many speeches and he's communicating the same thing every time. He is solely focused on communicating recognition of mind. Well, what you can notice with the subject-object thing is that although there's a feeling of subject, first of all, it's not always there. You do not actually always have a feeling of subject, nor do you always have the feeling of object. When subject arises, you can relax subject. And in the vision, for example, when object arises, you can relax object. By relaxing object, subject also relaxes. So you're relaxing the whole thing all at once. So you don't need to isolate the 18 ayatanas. You can relax them all just by relaxing. Therefore, there's no need to stare at yourself. Just like in the vision, you can notice the eyes fixating. For them to fixate on a point, there basically has to be an object there. If there's an object there, then there's also a subject. And so you can release that. Yeah, Tim.
I like how Orgyen Rinpoche was pointing out how object, we sort of insert that additional layer of, it's not that every individual object is empty, but that all objects are manifestations of our one mind, or co-emergent features of our one mind. And our one mind is, or my mind is, of the nature of emptiness. So in that way, you don't have to identify, oh, that is empty, that is empty, but it's all energies co-created by the mind. The mind is of the nature of emptiness.
Yeah. Emptiness is Dharmakaya. So to say that something is empty is to say that it's of the essence of Dharmakaya. That's all that means. Sometimes Buddhists talk about it as if it's an analytical emptiness, that there is an object, you stay with the object, and then you realize its insubstantiality through analysis. You can't approach Dharmakaya through analysis. So it's not real emptiness. It's not bad, it's an excuse to rest more. It's not what emptiness is. Well, what's Rolpa Nangsi?
Oh, asking. Rupa is our host. Haha. Rupa is the display of the energy. Yeah, I believe that's the term for it, like Dang, Sao, and Rupa. Yeah. So when Tim
Oh,
was
it's the other way.
it's the other way.
Yeah,
So,
Dang Rolpa Tsal.
Dang Rupa Sao. I believe Rupa is the display. I think there is some formulations which are saying no, actually it's no, Sao is the display or something like that. But the main point is that when Tim was sharing that, I was like, oh yes, it's all like an energetic display. So that's why I put that in the chat.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. But, relax all the views. So if there's an impression of multiplicity, relax it. If there's an impression of singularity, relax that too. To say that everything is one and try to make that true perceptually would just be imposing an external view on something that is already free of a view. If there are no objects, how can they be many? It doesn't make sense. If they're all singular, how can there be discernment between them? So don't figure it out. Just rest. Actually, we were talking about in the Discord, does a Buddha perceive? Something like that. And so I was looking at one of the treatises that Rongzompa wrote. He has his discourses on Buddhology. And he gave a lot of text about it. But towards the conclusion, he basically said something like, people just shouldn't talk about this. Whatever view you have, just make sure it's in accord with your philosophical system and let it be. After listing 8 different ways you can get it wrong. It's just really lovely to not have to figure things out. If you want to be at peace, that's a good step in that direction. Otherwise, the analysis process will just keep churning, tricking you into thinking that some progress is being made. Who's evaluating progress? A liar, basically. Someone just generating stuff. So no progress, no analysis, just peace. Anything else for today? All right, then let's dedicate and just take a moment of silence. Remember all the beings in this presence who are suffering and be with them. Thank you, everyone.